The thought was getting more powerful, and I was thinking the whole time, like, dude, but if you drink this box of pills with that box of pills, you will never wake up again, and then this will be over.
So join me today on a branding photo shoot for Ryno. He's an amazingly talented hairstylist, and he also has a really cool testimony and story to share. So watch the whole video to hear his testimony and story, and to also see the results of the photos and the videos.
My name is Ryno. I am 39 years old. I live and work in Durbanville. I work at a lovely salon with my best friend and his wife, Chad and Leo de Lange. Wonderful people. I was actually brought up in Bredasdorp, a lovely little place. Yeah, I grew up there in a middle class, loving family, I would say. Yeah, my parents were fantastic. I had a wonderful relationship with my brother. One of the things that kind of changed my life, and it was a massive event that happened, is the day that my parents actually told me that they are getting a divorce. And I was thinking to myself, like, is this even possible? Parents are allowed to just separate, and it kind of threw my whole life in this kind of turmoil. I became very angry as a child. I got suspended from school many a times. Was into all kinds of promiscuous kind of stuff, like drinking. We actually did this one thing called sniffing spray paint, which was insane. So there was my first introduction of getting high. But I kind of continued down this downward spiral, even from like a young age, from like 15 to 16. I was getting more into like heavy metal music, you know, Korn, Limp Bizkit, and these were all angry bands. And I always felt like I could really connect to the music, to the lyrics, and it was just kind of a way for me, I feel like, to escape, to kind of deal with my anger unknowingly. I was subconsciously being influenced by all of this music. So then the next kind of big event that took place for me is when me and my brother, we were forced to move to my mom, because my mom had custody of us, and she had asked us to come stay in Cape Town. And it was such a big shock to the system, you know, coming from a school from about 400 people or so, and this school of like 3,400 people. The one thing I realized, that I realize now, is that I really struggled to make friends. I really struggled to connect with people, you know, because I was angry, but somehow I still ended up making some bad friends. And these friends just kind of helped me continue my bad habits that I had already had from like a young age. With these guys, I started like you know, smoking lots of weed, and then it kind of progressed. But I only had dabbled in it at school. So all of this kind of stuff happened in 1 year, because towards the end of the year, which was also a great thing that happened to me, is I got asked by a friend if I can play rugby, and I said yes, I can. And that kind of threw me into a bit of a better culture. Like, it was still a drinking culture, but not as much a substance abuse culture, like a drug culture. So obviously then becoming great friends with these people, made some lovely friends. Some of them are still my best friends still today. Yeah, we would binge drink over weekends and that sort of thing. So I would say my life kind of slowed down for a little bit. We had a good friend, me and my brother, his name was Yaku. He was fantastic. Even my brother always used to play rugby together. He was like a third brother in our house. And for some reason, we will never know, you know, kind of what was going on in his mind. But yes, he went to his dad's room, and he got a gun. He got his father's gun, and then he shot himself. And I could just remember the feeling of I would say complete helplessness. I wasn't too sure if I was depressed before, but this kind of made me realize that, sure, I am not in a good space. And it's weird how that kind of Yaku taking his own life also sparked the idea in my head, where I was like, well, sure, you know, like, just like I thought, you know, parents couldn't get divorced, I never really thought about suicide, but kind of planted a little seed there within my head. I started actually becoming good at rugby, which was amazing. You know, I played Western Province Sevens and played for many first teams at many clubs. Got asked to come play rugby in New Zealand, which was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It opened my eyes so much to the world. It was a very tough environment, which obviously I got accustomed to, but I was still struggling mentally. And I can remember this was the year before the Rugby World Cup. They released this thing called Spice, synthetic weed. And I can remember the first time smoking this, it was the highest I have ever been. What was crazy was how quickly I got addicted to this spice, because obviously once again, you know, I would numb my life. I would not have to think about, you know, anything or anyone. To escape that, I had to come back to South Africa. Since I came back from New Zealand, I was studying accounting and also part-time working, but I always felt like, yo, this is not what I want to do in my life. And then one day I saw this video. It was 40 minutes long and it was called barber. And I remembered seeing it and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. It had all these kind of misfits in there. So this guy called Rob, him and his, I think it's his friend Liam, they opened up this shop, but they helped a lot of their friends off the streets. He taught them all how to cut hair, and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Like this is something that I would love to do. So I ended up going to like a few barber shops. How can I go about the process of becoming like a barber or a hairstylist? And he said, well, he knows this one friend. When I drove there, I immediately saw this guy, you know, and I could remember seeing him and I was like, wow, this guy is everything that I think, or that I thought at that time was cool. After we worked, he asked me, he was like, hey dude, do you wanna come hang out at my place? Like, sweet. And he walks me straight over to an alcohol shop. We buy a crate of, I think it was Black Label quartz or something. I could remember later on the evening after we finished this crate of quartz, the next minute I hear someone is knocking at the door and a guy comes in. They have like a quick exchange. The guy leaves and he comes down and he's like, yeah, we're gonna, you know, as he would say, cup a few lines, you know. And sheesh, I could remember we drank rum, did a bag of coke, and listened to music the whole night. And was the first experience, but this was the first of many to come. We used to do that for weekends, day in, day out. That was just, we were like each other's match to the fuel. And I could remember getting to about like month 9 or so, where having gone through weeks of this kind of binge, this is not sustainable. And throughout that period, my mental health was taking a massive dip. But you would kind of get back by doing more drugs, feel a little bit better. So you would repeat that cycle the whole time. And I would kind of continue this kind of lifestyle, let's say 8 years, of just smoking weed every day, getting horribly drunk over the weekends, and sometimes during the week I was starting to think about suicide almost every day. Even though I tried a few times to stop with the drug addiction, I could just never sustain it. I was never like, it was sometimes for a month, sometimes for 2 months or so. I will tell you about the last time, because at that time I was on heavy antidepressants, this like whole box of pills, and I was in my room and I had like whiskey and I started to drink. The thought was getting more powerful, and I was thinking the whole time, like, dude, but if you drink this box of pills with that box of pills, you will never wake up again, and then this will be over. You know, my mom's face popping up and my sister, and I realized, yo, if not for myself, for them, I have to find a way to do this thing called life. And that's kind of where I started dabbling in all kinds of different faiths. Funnily enough, never Christianity. No, then it was Buddhism, then it was Stoicism, you know, then I went Hare Krishna, which eventually also led me to Satanism, where I got the book and I started reading about that as well. None of these books are bringing me any peace. I didn't feel any better in this search for something higher. I could remember actually your husband was a client of mine, Ruan, who's become a great friend. I remember he always used to talk to me, trying to share, never, like, I was listening, but I realized now what he was doing. He was planting the seed constantly. The one day he came and he brought me this book from one of my favorite bands. It was a biography of one of the band members called Brian Head Walsh, and he played for a band called Korn. It was the first time I looked at a book and I looked at this person, and I was like, oh wow, this is someone I can relate to. Also struggled with the same kind of suicidal thoughts, drug addiction, to realize that nobody is too far away for God to save you. Everybody is worthy. If God could show him mercy and grace, surely God could show me. There was a scripture, I think in Matthew 11:28, and it said, come to me all who laden and are heavy burdened, and I shall give you rest. And I think that's one of the verses that has stood out for me since till today. It's like one of the most powerful verses that I've read, because I needed that rest. And I realized right there that, like, wow, this is possibly a way. Maybe I should look to Christianity again. Still didn't do it. So I think a few months later, I was once again in my room doing drugs, drinking, and I remember watching a story. It was about a girl with no legs. I just remember there was this presence. All of a sudden there was this presence, and it was like a hug. It's difficult for me to explain, but I knew right there and then that God was with me. And I realized, wow, I am incredibly ungrateful for my wonderful life that I have. And I could remember like going down on my knees and praying for the first time and asking, God, I said, like, hey God, if you are here, please, I can't do this myself, like I need help, and I am not strong enough, please help me with my addiction problems, and please also forgive me for my ungratefulness, Lord. And I could feel a warm embrace. I could feel it right there at that moment, and I realized, wow, and I said, God, I repent my sins, and I ask for forgiveness. And I said, from this moment on, I will follow you. I will follow whatever is best you think for my life. I will no longer trust in my own way, but in your way. So I asked for mercy and for grace. And I could feel that I received that at that moment. And I remember I went to bed that night being a full-blown addict. I have, since that day, never smoked weed. I've never gotten drunk again, and I've never done any cocaine or any drugs of any sorts. And this is what I tell people. I'm like, what else could make that possible if not for divine intervention? This is 1 year and 8 months since I've been sober, walking with the Lord, and it has been an absolute blessing. It's hard for me to explain to people how wonderful it is when God works with you and He works in your heart. And He changes your heart. I've gone from a very negative person to a very happy person. I've gone from seeing the worst in people to seeing the best in people. Sometimes people don't believe Him because they always see this like smiling face and that sort of stuff. And it's like funny because I can show people with my tattoos. On my chest is written misanthropist, but it purely means it's a person that hates the world. Like I always thought, like, should I cover up these tattoos? But I'm like, yo, it's a wonderful story to show where I have been, how God has changed my life. God has definitely given me hope, definitely peace. There's peace for the first time. There's peace. I would definitely encourage people I know in my industry, in the tattoo industry and the music industry. There's a lot of people that are struggling, that don't have any rest in their souls. If you speak to God and if you ask for His help, He will help you. No one is too far away. That is what I thought. I thought I was too far away to be saved, to be helped. Give it a go. That's what I would say. At least give it a go.